PGA Tour in chaos. That phrase gets thrown around a lot these days, but this time, it actually fits, because what just happened between the new CEO and the biggest name in golf is something we have never seen before. Brian Rolapp tried to silence Rory McIlroy, and it did not just fail, it exploded in his face. Here is the part that should terrify every player on tour. Rolapp came from the NFL. He is a media executive. He is used to controlling the message. He is used to players falling in line. But golf is not the NFL, and Rory McIlroy is not a regular employee. He is the voice of the sport. When he speaks, people listen. When he criticizes, people notice. And when the CEO tries to shut him up, that is when the real trouble starts. The story begins with a private conversation, a quiet chat between the new boss and his biggest star. Rolapp thought he could fix the problem behind closed doors. He thought he could convince Rory to change his tune. Instead, he set off a chain reaction that nobody saw coming. A forced statement, a massive scandal, and a special treatment controversy that made everyone question whether the rules even apply to the top players anymore. So, what exactly did Rory say that made Rolapp panic? What happened in that private meeting? And why did the attempt to silence him backfire so badly that it made the CEO look worse than ever? My take? Rolapp made the biggest miscalculation of his tenure. He treated Rory like a problem to be managed instead of a partner to be respected. But I want to know what you think. Was he right to try and control Rory's message? Or did he overplay his hand completely? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want to see exactly how this whole mess unfolded, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story gets a whole lot messier before it's over. Because to understand why this silence attempt blew up so spectacularly, you first need to understand the man who tried to pull the strings. And that man thought he knew exactly what he was doing. So who exactly is Brian Rolapp? Before he walked into the PGA Tour offices, he spent 22 years inside the NFL machine. He was the chief media and business officer. He negotiated billion-dollar television deals. He controlled the message for the most powerful sports league on the planet. In that world, players speak when they are told to speak. They fall in line because the machine is bigger than any one person. And Rolapp got very comfortable with that reality. But golf is not the NFL. The PGA Tour does not have a commissioner who can fine players into silence. It has independent contractors who answer to nobody except themselves. And when Rolapp arrived in 2025, he brought the NFL playbook with him. He looked at the tour and saw a product that needed restructuring. He saw too many events, too many players, and not enough scarcity. So he proposed a two-track system. Track 1 would be the elite events, the biggest names, the biggest purses, the must-watch tournaments. Track 2 would be everything else. A challenger series where the rest of the field fights for survival. This was not a small change. It was a complete overhaul of how the tour operates. Field sizes dropped from 156 players down to 144. Smaller events shrank from 132 to 120. And the most controversial part? The number of fully exempt tour cards was slashed from 125 to 100. 25 players who used to have guaranteed status now had nothing. They would have to fight for their livelihoods every single week. The tour blamed pace of play. They said smaller fields would speed things up. But the players did not buy that explanation for 1 second. Veterans like Lucas Glover called it insulting. Major champion Matt Fitzpatrick publicly backed him, saying it was pathetic that the pace of play issue comes up every year and nothing ever gets done. The players could see what was really happening. This was not about pace of play. This was about controlling the product, creating scarcity, making the tour more like the NFL, where every game feels like an event. But the backlash did not stop Rolapp. He pushed forward. He believed he was doing what was best for the long-term health of the tour. He believed the players would eventually come around, and for a while, it seemed like they might. The grumbling continued, but nobody was willing to openly defy the new CEO. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak out. Then Rory McIlroy stepped up to the microphone, and everything changed. The rank and file were furious, but they kept their heads down. Nobody expected the biggest star in the sport to fire the first shot. Nobody expected the Rory to say what he said next. It happened at the 2026 US Open press conference. The room was full of reporters. Rory was asked about the two-track system, and he did not hold back. He looked straight into the cameras and said Track 2 is a glorified Corn Ferry event. That was not a criticism. That was a demolition. He was telling the world that Rolapp's signature reform was nothing more than a rebranded minor league. He was saying the new CEO had no idea what he was doing, but he did not stop there. He used the RBC Canadian Open as an example. That tournament is one of the oldest on the schedule. Rory has won it twice. He loves that event, and he said he is worried it will become one of those Track 2 events. He said the Canadian Open does not deserve to be treated like a secondary tournament. He was drawing a line in the sand. He was saying certain events matter too much to be demoted. Then he went even further. He said the tour was fine before LIV came along. He said the competition from LIV forced the tour to raise purses and cut fields. But now that LIV looks like less of a threat, maybe it is time to go back to the old ways. He was undermining the entire justification for Rolapp's reforms. He was saying the changes were a panic response to a threat that no longer exists. And he was saying it right before the biggest tournament of the year. The golf world stopped and listened. Rory McIlroy is not known for being controversial. He is measured. He is careful. When he speaks, people pay attention because he does not waste words. And this time, he had just thrown a grenade into the middle of the tour's carefully managed narrative. The timing could not have been worse for Rolapp. The US Open was just weeks away. The reforms were about to be officially announced, and the biggest star in the sport had just publicly called them a joke. Rolapp had a choice. He could have ignored it. He could have let Rory speak and moved on. But that is not how the NFL works. In the NFL, you control the message. You do not let players undermine your vision. So Rolapp decided to handle it the way he always had, behind closed doors, quietly, firmly. He thought he could bring Rory back into line. That public outburst was dangerous enough. But Rolapp chose a much more dangerous weapon, the private conversation. Rolapp asked to meet with Rory. A quiet chat. No cameras, no reporters. Just the new CEO and the most powerful player in the game. We do not know exactly what was said in that room, but we know what happened next. Rolapp had his press conference to announce the reforms. He stood at the podium and mentioned that he had spoken with Rory. He said they talked about the changes. He implied that Rory was on board. He tried to create the impression that the star player had come around. Then he publicly responded to Rory's criticism. He said Track 2 events will have recognizable venues. They will have healthy purses. They will include the same players you see every week. He said this is nothing like the Corn Ferry Tour. He was trying to reframe the narrative. He was trying to make Rory look like he had overreacted. He was trying to show that the CEO was in control, and for a moment, it worked. The press conference went smoothly. The reforms were announced. The tour looked unified. Rolapp walked away believing he had handled the situation perfectly. He had neutralized the threat. He had silenced the loudest voice in the room. He had done what he was hired to do. But then the cracks started to show. Rory released a statement through the Golf Channel. He said the announcement was a positive step for professional golf. He said he was encouraged by the structure. He said it would serve players and fans well. It was a perfect PR statement. It was exactly what Rolapp wanted to hear. It was also completely unbelievable. Nobody bought it. Not the media, not the fans, not the other players. Everyone knew Rory had been pressured. Everyone knew that statement did not sound like him. He had just called the system a glorified Corn Ferry event. Now he was calling it a positive step. The contrast was too obvious. The manipulation was too transparent. Golf Digest described it perfectly. They said the wayward son was brought back into the fold. Briefly. That word briefly was the killer. It told everyone that this was temporary. This was forced. This was not genuine. Rory was not suddenly a believer. He had just been muzzled, and the public could see right through it. Rolapp thought he had won. He had no idea the worst backlash was still coming from a completely unexpected direction. The forced statement was embarrassing enough. But then the real scandal dropped. It turned out Rory had only played 14 events during the season. The tour requires 15. That is the minimum. If you do not play 15 events, you lose your membership. You lose your tour card. You lose everything. But wait, Rory is Rory McIlroy. He is the biggest star in the sport. He is the face of the tour. He is the man who just had a quiet chat with the CEO. And suddenly, rules started to bend. Rolapp announced he was using a discretionary clause, a special provision for extenuating circumstances. He was going to exempt Rory from punishment. He was going to let him keep his card despite breaking the rules. The golf world exploded. Players were furious. Fans were outraged. The media had a field day. How could the CEO justify this? How could he give special treatment to the very player he had just tried to silence? It was hypocrisy at the highest level. 4Play, one of the biggest golf media accounts, posted it bluntly. Rory will not be penalized. That was the headline. The message was clear. The rules do not apply to everyone. Some players are more equal than others. And the player who just got special treatment was the same player who had been publicly rebuked. Josiah, a respected golf journalist, went even further. He said this is clearly special treatment. All players have the freedom to skip events to prepare for majors, but not all players have the freedom to ignore the required minimum and face no consequences. He was pointing out the obvious. Rory got a pass because he is Rory, and Rolapp gave it to him. Fans on social media were relentless. One post captured the mood perfectly. The jokes actually write themselves. They were laughing at the absurdity. Rolapp tried to discipline Rory. He tried to control him. He tried to silence him. And in the end, he gave him a free pass. He proved that Rory is above the rules. He made his biggest critic look untouchable. That was the backfire nobody saw coming. Rolapp wanted to shut Rory up. Instead, he made him look more powerful than ever. The special treatment scandal turned everything upside down. Rolapp looked weak. He looked like he was afraid of Rory. He looked like he could not control the tour's biggest star. The attempt to silence had become proof of Rory's power. The more Rolapp tried to manage him, the more untouchable he became. And through it all, Rory just kept playing golf. He kept his head down. He kept winning. He kept being the best player in the world. He did not need to say anything else. The situation spoke for itself. The CEO had tried to take him down. The CEO had failed, and now the CEO was giving him special privileges to avoid punishment. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Rolapp came from the NFL. In the NFL, the commissioner has absolute power. Players are fined, players are suspended, players fall in line. But golf is different. Rory McIlroy is not a running back. He does not need the PGA Tour to survive. He is the PGA Tour. Without him, the product loses its biggest draw. Rolapp learned that lesson the hard way. He tried to control Rory. He tried to silence him. He tried to make him an example. And every single move backfired. The forced statement was exposed as fake. The special treatment was exposed as hypocrisy. The entire attempt to manage the narrative collapsed in front of everyone. Rolapp lost more than just the battle. He lost the trust of the locker room. Rory was still standing, still speaking, still untouchable. The story took another twist in July. Rory was asked about the potential punishment again. He was asked if he was worried about his membership. His answer was simple. He said he was not worried because he had spoken to Brian. He was calm. He was confident. He knew exactly what had happened behind closed doors. He knew he was protected. That answer told you everything you needed to know. Rory was not afraid. He was not worried. He had already won the fight. The CEO had tried to silence him. The CEO had failed. And now Rory was the one in control. He was the one who had the power. He was the one who could speak freely without fear of retaliation. The players on tour noticed. The fans noticed. The media noticed. Rolapp had created a monster. He had tried to make an example out of Rory. Instead, he had shown everyone that the biggest stars can break the rules. They can say whatever they want. They can play whenever they want. And nothing will happen to them. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a CEO who tried to bring NFL discipline to a sport that does not work that way. It leaves us with a star player who proved he is bigger than the system. And it leaves us with a tour that is more divided than ever. What did the fans want to know when they clicked on this title? They wanted to know who Brian Rolapp is. They wanted to know what Rory said that made him panic. They wanted to know how he tried to silence him. And they wanted to know why it all blew up in his face. Here is the full answer. Rolapp is the NFL executive who thought he could control golf like he controlled football. Rory is the player who refused to be controlled. The attempt to silence him backfired because the fans are not stupid. They saw through the forced statement. They saw through the special treatment. They saw through the hypocrisy. Rolapp tried to treat Rory like an employee, but Rory is not an employee. He is the franchise. And when you try to silence the franchise, you do not win. You just show everyone how weak you really are. That is the real story. That is why this matters. And that is why this chaos is nowhere near over.